everyone.
Welcome to live stream of YouTube channel Pro Robots. We're glad to see all of you who are interested in robotics.
My name is Alisa Konyakhovskaya.
And I am Alex Baikin. I'm YouTube creator of YouTube channel Pro Robots.
And today we have wonderful guest, is Daniel Theobald, founder of Vecna Robotics.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Dear viewers, please write your question and we will ask our guest.
Like this video, subscribe, and be informed about our news and videos about robots.
We have a lot of questions for you, Daniel, and let's start.
First of all, tell us please about your background. What is your way into robotics? How do you become a robotist?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was very fortunate, and I didn't realize at the time how fortunate I was to be born where I was and when I was. I grew up in San Jose, California, what afterwards became known as Silicon Valley. And I just had a very unique experience there, which I didn't realize was unique. I thought this was going on everywhere in the world. But of course, at that time, home computers were becoming a thing. And I just had access to computers and programming and electronics as a youth all the way through. I attended one of the first elementary schools in the world that had a computer lab.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. But that just, I think, set me on a path of technology, of enthusiasm for robotics, and just had a lot of great experiences. Ended up getting to MIT eventually in Massachusetts, where I am now, and sort of built my own robotics educational program because at that time there was not a lot of robotics out there. And then have just been really dedicated to this idea of helping humanity as a whole benefit from the value that automation and robotics can provide.
Tell us please about your company, Vecna Robotics. What does it do?
Yeah, the easiest way to describe what Vecna Robotics does is autonomous or driverless forklifts for moving pallets. We hear a lot about driverless cars and trucks that will drive on the road without an operator. We do that, but we do it in factories and warehouses for moving goods on pallets. Most people perhaps don't appreciate it, but as you look around the room that you're in, almost everything you see there at some point was on a pallet. Pallets are the way that our physical economy moves in the world. And so we've really focused in on this issue of how do we take equipment that has traditionally been driven by human beings to move these pallets and make them fully autonomous.
What is your clients?
Mostly.
Yeah, a whole range. Customers like FedEx, for example, big shippers. One of the largest healthcare distributors in the US is one of our key clients. Basically, anybody who has a factory or a warehouse that is moving material around is really one of our customers or target customers. Here you can actually see a video for one of our exciting new sort of concept projects, I'd say right now, which is a fully autonomous pallet handling reach truck that can travel down narrow aisles and pick and place pallets from standard racking. Really fun project to work on. You can see that it operates sort of alongside human workers as well. All of our robots, I would say, are very different from traditional automated guided vehicles that just followed a specific line in the floor. You know, we're not able to operate in a much more flexible environment. So we've really focused on this idea of using modern robotics to allow for the automation of a much broader range of tasks than a traditional automated guided vehicle would be capable of.
I think that we have a lot of new young people who just started to do something in robotics. And can you tell, please, how long it was your way from first development, physics robot, and then to company to start to sell this robot?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Elisa. And I think that oftentimes we misjudge how hard it is to go from a university level prototype or demonstration where we show that we've got a physical device that can move autonomously to being able to operate reliably and safely in the real world in a customer's warehouse or factory 24/7 with high throughput and high reliability. You know, we have at Vecna Robotics over 60 million lines of code, 60 million lines of software that make it possible. And that's just taken us years. We've been at it for 2 decades. Now, there are a lot more resources available to help people do that faster than existed in the past when we started. So that's the good news. And one of the things that I really have invested a lot in is an organization called MassRobotics. MassRobotics is an industry association whose whole purpose is to help startups, entrepreneurs, etc., be able to move much faster from concept to actually deployed products in the world. So it provides a lot of resources like space, like manufacturing equipment, test space, access to real customers, access to investors, understanding of which tools work and which tools maybe are not quite ready for prime time. But it's a really important point. There is so much work to be done from the time that you have actually shown something, do it once, to being able to actually do it reliably hundreds of thousands of times for real customers in the real world. It's a big lift.
Yeah, I also think this is the most difficult things to create, not just some prototype, but create a business process that can develop and sell this robot. And is very difficult. It's more difficult to do it in robotic than to do it to IT, because in IT you usually just need your computer, for example, if you do some website, but in robotics is really difficult. You said about MassRobotics. I know this is like local cluster. How many companies supported by MassRobotics?
Yeah, so MassRobotics is an organization that, while started here in New England, in the northeastern United States, it is really focused on this idea of helping to move the robotics industry forward, you know, worldwide. Over, I think the last count was around 400 different companies are part of the MassRobotics ecosystem. That includes startups, that includes large robotic users, that includes more mature companies, but they all have something in common, and that is that they understand that the future of our economy really is dependent on successful adoption of autonomy. So some of the things that we're focusing on are how we can make it easier for customers to adopt these type of solutions, for instance, through interoperability standards, through good understanding of case studies of what works well, maybe what's not quite ready, those type of things.
Yeah, and I also want to ask about MassRobotics, that is it possible to come abroad, not for some developers, for some startups, can they came to Boston and create company, for example, with support of MassRobotics? Is just for American or for abroad people too?
Absolutely not just for Americans. We actually have companies from all over the world that, and there's a number of different models. One where we will have a company that is in, Europe or Asia or Russia, for example, that has a desire to start to participate in the United States, maybe North American robotics economy. They will oftentimes get space in MassRobotics and get access to all of those resources to help them be successful. Right? Robotics is a team sport, and it is not something where any one region, any one company, any one industry are really going to dominate. It's something that is important to the entire human race, and it's something that the entire human race will ultimately contribute to and participate in. So MassRobotics welcomes everybody from around the world. We'll offer help and suggestions and access to really anybody who asks. And I think this is the spirit in which we do many of our programs, like our STEM education programs, where we're working hard to try and help foster the next generation of engineering talent. The interoperability standards, like I talked about, these are things that are not focused to help North American companies be successful, but to really help the industry as a whole worldwide solve common problems that we all have that get in the way of adoption. I like to describe it as what I call pre-competitive collaboration. That means competition is important, right? I think the world is realizing by and large that competition, free enterprise is an approach that has merits and works. But it's not the end all be all. There are lots of times when working together as an industry, as competitors, has really profound benefits to all of us. And so if we can work together effectively pre-competition, everybody wins. We basically grow the opportunities for everybody, and we're not getting in the way of the competitive marketplaces that actually end up producing the best results in the long term. We're actually helping them.
Yeah, it's great. And you said how do you support companies to develop, to create robots, but how do you help companies to find clients in MassRobotics?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of times we will host companies, some of the bigger sponsors of MassRobotics will come and they will actually do challenges, for example. They will say, hey, MassRobotics ecosystem or community, we have this problem in our enterprise that we don't know how to solve. We thought that maybe robotics might be an answer. And they'll take that challenge out to the entire MassRobotics community, and then companies can participate. They can say, they can go in front of that large buyer, like, a Procter & Gamble or a DHL or a FedEx or, you name it, the big Fortune 50 companies. And they'll allow them access. They'll allow them to engage with these entrepreneurs, these scientists, these engineers in ways that perhaps wasn't really practical before. So it's really great from that point of view that organizations around the world view MassRobotics and other clusters as a source for solutions, as a source for talent that can help solve their hard problems. And of course, then the other side of that is working directly with the companies to help them identify industries or applications where their specific technology might be the most beneficial. We just hosted recently an event on construction robotics, where, you know, the biggest players in construction came in, and robotics companies who thought they had something to offer the construction industry came in, and they all got together and they had a discussion, they had a conversation, and great things come out of that.
Yeah, great. And we have several questions from our viewers. I'll ask just now. For example, first question was about studying. Which one is better, mechatronics or robotics to study? What do you think?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. And when I was going through my educational process, there were no robotics programs. And so Mechatronics was a great stand-in for that. I kind of did a combined program of software engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. Robotics is kind of exciting to me because it is sort of the one engineering thing that involves all of those disciplines. But I would say if there are robotics programs available in your universities or educational institutions, absolutely take advantage of those. But I would say the one thing to be careful of is don't get too sucked in to a very specific way of thinking. We need innovation. We will continue to need innovation in this industry for a long time. Always seeking the broadest educational background you can, I think, is a good strategy, right? Because if everybody's just doing the same thing, we're going to limit the success and value we create over time.
Great. And next question about study. Is there a place to learn about robotics beginners at advanced levels on the internet?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, more and more resources are becoming available for that. There are, tremendous tutorials on YouTube and that kind of thing. But, I was recently talking to a company that is building a whole online curriculum around autonomy and driverless vehicles and that type of thing. I think, if there's not a good source that lists all of those out, maybe that's something we could put together. But, the internet is amazing now. The fact that you can go on there and find answers to just about any questions. But, I guess the other side of that I'll say as well is one thing that surprises me a lot is how hesitant people are to reach out to people on the internet. Most of the time, these are just people, and you may see some article, you may see an interview, right, on Pro Robots, where they're interviewing Daniel Theobald, the founder of Vecna Robotics. You should take advantage of that. You should reach out. People are willing to help. People want to be a force for good. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Just because I'm in the United States and many of your viewers are in Russia, doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation. As we know, tools like Google Translate are excellent these days. So I would just encourage a lot more, a lot more communication, a lot more reaching out. We can really help each other be successful.
We have a lot of possibilities now, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, if you do robotic, you also need the robots. So to practice somehow, because okay, you have internet possibility, but also you need to find robot to do some practice, because sometimes in some universities we have such difficulties when students have a theory a lot, but they do not have access to robots, and when they finish education, they didn't know how to use it. Sometimes it's happen. It depends of university and so on. But anyway,
and the equipment.
Equipment is very important too.
That's right. Well, and let me say, Lisa, you make a great point. And one of these organizations that I was just talking to, they actually have a whole lab set up with real robots that you can then program. You then will send Docker code to them, and then it runs on the real robots and you can get feedback. It's interesting actually, because my thesis at MIT many years ago was about controlling robots over the internet, and very much had that idea of not everybody has access to hardware, but more and more I think you will see these opportunities where you can write code and you can run it on someone else's hardware. Simulation first, right? Simulation is really great these days, so you always start there. But then when you come to the limits of what you can test with simulation, there are opportunities to run it on real hardware. You don't have to own the hardware yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It is important to have this possibility to go from virtuality to reality, because something can change, something can happen, because reality all time is more difficult than our imagination or what we think about virtuality.
And next question.
Okay, yes. Next question from our viewers. How many years do you feel like we are away from the home robotics servant era?
We have a lot of factory robots, but we need robots at home.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on this. I'll tell you a story. This was years ago, but a whole group of executives from the Japanese government came to visit Vecna, and there was a real push. Japan, like many places, is struggling with what they call the graying or the aging of their workforce, and they were very interested in figuring out, how do we take care of our elderly with robots so that our young people can be in the factories. And this really struck me as the wrong approach, meaning taking care of people is something that people should do, in my opinion. And it's something that's going to be very difficult for robots to do in reality. One of our first robots we built was called the Bear Robot. And, it was this idea of rescuing a soldier from the battlefield and picking the soldier up. So point being that I would always err on the side of freeing humans up from less important things so that they can spend more time in the home, so that they can spend more time taking care of their family. Humans need human touch, I would say. Now, a slightly different side of it, if you're talking about, robots to pick up your socks and do the dishes and wash your clothes and those type of things. First of all, we already have a lot of robots that do those things, right? There's washing machines, there are dishwashers, and
robots.
Yeah, I was loading my dishwasher up last night, and of course we always think, I wish there was a robot that could do my dishes for me, because we now think of doing dishes as loading up a machine that does our dishes for us. So really what we're saying is we want a robot that can load our dishwasher for us, not do the dishes. But a more direct answer, I've worked and consulted on numerous projects around home robots, and I think we're going to see some of that. Floor cleaning robots are one example where we sort of get to a point where there is a practical solution. But full sort of butler robots, no, that's a ways away. And personally, I question whether that's really what we want in the long term anyway. My opinion.
Okay. So it's not so close to our reality, but anyway, it happened.
Okay, maybe we will come back to logistics. And I think you found the great niche of applying of robots, logistics. And what do you think in general? What happened in near future with logistic robots?
Yeah, so The reason why logistics is a great place for robots right now is because it is what I would call a semi-structured environment. You have some control over the environment. You have very specific things that you need the robots to do, and there's what I would call scale. Right? You have a need for a lot of these robots all doing the same thing. And again, when you compare that to like a robot operating in the home, every home is going to be different. The things that every person is going to want that robot to do in their homes is all different. So right now, at least, logistics is a great place where you can have a lot of robots all doing the same thing, which are not things that are great for human beings to do. In logistics, they have a very hard time holding on to workers because human beings don't like to do this type of work. They get bored. It's the same thing day in and day out. So we are going to see, I think, continued massive adoption in logistics because the other side of it that's driving it is that consumer expectations are really, in some sense, you could argue, unrealistic, right? We want to be able to go onto an online shopping site, at least here in the US, and I'm not familiar with how it works in Russia, but we want to be able to go onto an online shopping site, press a button, and magically have a physical product show up on our doorstep, sometimes even the same day. And in order to accomplish that, you can't do it without large amounts of automation. So we're going to see a lot of adoption there, but then, robotics will bleed into all these other areas too, construction, on highway, trucks, and even in the home. Those things are just going to take more time.
What is the most difficult things to create fully autonomous warehouse?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And I think that a lot of times it is what I would call the exceptions. We can all, I think just about anyone with an engineering background can probably build a robot to do something once, right? We can capture a video of it doing this task successfully once. But where robots have failed is what happens when something goes wrong. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, famously said he was trying to make a completely automated warehouse for manufacturing Tesla cars. And the effort largely failed. And he said, we made a mistake, correction, I made a mistake. We tried to over automate. Humans are underrated. And so I think that provides us some insight into some of the mistakes we've made in the past. When we try and completely eliminate humans, we're probably making a bad trade-off. The right approach is to take the things that robots are really good at and pair it effectively with the things that humans are really good at. And then you can achieve really amazing results. And then over time, the automation can do more and more and more. But if it's not robust to dealing with a situation when something goes wrong, then it's not going to scale.
I see. And what technology do we need to move forward with logistical robots?
Well, I think the big area is really just sensing and processing. We now have the physical machines that have the physical capabilities to do the work. It's about making them smarter. And that's why, again, people used to get upset at me when I said this a decade ago, but robotics is 99% software. It really is, right? You will have a small mechanical engineering team that will build an amazing device that has physical capabilities, but at the end of the day, it's a statue unless you have the software that really gives it the intelligence, the capabilities that it needs to provide value and to do it reliably and robustly. So, if you're really interested in robotics, there's going to continue to be great roles for mechanical engineers and electronic engineers. but 99% of it, it's going to be the software engineers that make it happen. And I'm a mechanical engineering. That's my main educational background was mechanical engineering. So I'm not down on mechanical engineers. I think mechanical engineers are amazing. But at the end of the day, software is what's going to make it all work.
What you think is main trends? Okay, sensors, software. What also will help change industry? For example, now is mostly some mobile platform, but we also need some picking tasks to be solved. And when to think about it, how we
Maybe
can
battery or something like this.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe also.
Yeah, wireless infrastructure tends to be a limiting factor. Having really good wireless in facilities can help. I'd say that batteries are always in need of improvement. In most of our applications, that's not a limiting factor because we have big equipment with big batteries that can operate for a long time. But yeah, better sensors and manipulators, right? Our eyes, our ears, even smell and others, touch, but then our hands and being able to manipulate things effectively. These are areas that we will see a tremendous amount of growth in the future. I was just visiting with a company that has really cool touch sensors that you can put on robot hands that allow them to better sense what they're grasping. So lots of things like that I think will help and give a richer environment for those software developers to make the machines even more intelligent.
Yeah, the robot needs something that human have, all this kind sensors to understand the reality. And you also mentioned Elon, and last year he announced that he planned to do humanoid robots. What do you think about it? Will he do it or not?
It's funny. I think everybody who first gets into robotics wants to do humanoid robots to start. Every single time. One of my first robots was a humanoid robot.
Why do you think they start to make it?
I think Hollywood, right? The movies, probably a big reason for that. Our imagination is really tied to this idea of robots that have a human form. I would never bet against Elon or anyone. Sorry, go ahead.
But Elon said that our environment is for humans, and this is why he would like to create humanoid.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The cost of doing it reliably is going to be quite large, and we will get there eventually, right? Walking robots a decade ago were still viewed as an unsolved problem. It's no longer an unsolved problem, right? Walking robots are a thing, good manipulators. We see soft manipulators. We have AI now that can help us interpret images more naturally. So all the pieces are there. I think the only caution that I would suggest is that we need to make sure to not be so in love with the technology that we don't solve the problem in the most cost-effective way possible. Yes, we could build a robot that we could build a humanoid robot that could do dishes by hand, right? Picks up the next plate and washes it. We could do that. And eventually we would be reasonably successful, but it's probably still not going to compete with the dishwasher, where you just load them all in and it washes them all at once. So the tasks that humans can do because of their human form, it doesn't always mean that that's the right or the most cost-effective way to do it. So it's going to be a mix. We're going to have robots of all different shapes and sizes. And, and ultimately the companies that are going to win are the companies that can provide the best return on investment. You buy a robot to do a job, and how well did it work? How much money did it save you? That's ultimately what chooses the winners and losers. Now, there is what I call a novelty play, right? A lot of times you can sell robots simply because they're cool, but that will only get you so far. So we just need to be very practical about that. If you're an engineer designing a robot and you're really excited about the technology, and then you're a little bit perplexed why the end customers are not as excited as you, it's because the end customers don't care that it's a robot. The end customer has a job that needs to get done, and it needs to get done cost effectively and reliably. So as those two worlds come together, then we will see success.
Okay, I agree with you, and I also have a question to you.
But I believe in Elon.
Okay, we will see. So I have a question to you. You mentioned Hollywood, and what do you think? There's a lot of film about robots, and it's it's doing good job for robotics to popularize it.
Yep, popularize, yeah.
Polarize it, or it create fears and some misunderstanding about robot possibility. What do you think? Is it good or no?
It's a great question. If you look back at early cinema from the 70s and 80s, it was very interesting that, at least here in the US, again, I won't comment on what happened in Russia in this area, but at least in the US, robots in the movies were almost always the enemy. If you looked at Japanese cinema, robots in the movies were almost always the hero. And that, I think, was this reflecting on how the population as a whole thought about technology. Now it's changed in the US a lot, where you do see a lot more movies. There's still plenty of movies where the robots are the enemy, but you see a lot more movies now where the robots are the heroes as well. So I think the concept of robots as threatening my livelihood, robots as threatening to take my job, I think that rhetoric is subsiding, is disappearing. So that's a good trend, where I think Hollywood probably did not help in adoption of robotics early on, because they presented robots as evil and as contrary to our interests. But another area where Hollywood or cinema has done us some disservice in the robotics industry is making it appear that robots are human-like. They are so intelligent. They're actually superhuman, right? They know more than humans. They sense more than humans. They have more strength and capability than humans. And this is just not true. Humans are amazing. Humans are going to continue to be far more amazing than robots and AI for a long, long time. Robotics is a tool that humans can use to be more productive, to be more human, quite frankly, than ever before. But we need to be careful to help our customers understand that the robots they see on the movie screen and real life robots are two completely different things, and that's fine. But we need to do a good job of managing their expectations so that they're not judging the amazing work that real engineers are doing against animators and movie makers in Hollywood, because that's just not a fair comparison, and it can get in the way of actual progress.
Yeah, and I think our channel is a good way to see what is going on in robotics in reality, not just in Hollywood, but also in real life. So
Yeah.
I think it's very important too. Okay,
Yeah.
we also have a question from our viewers.
Yeah, from chat, and we have only practical questions here. It is great. What are your thoughts on inverse kinematics and object detection algorithms in robotics arms, especially in agriculture for picking fruits?
Yeah, well, I'd say that all the tools we need to do that effectively are there. The problem, of course, with picking fruits is that it's an unstructured, largely unstructured environment, and we don't always appreciate how good the human being is at judging when a particular piece of fruit is ready to be picked. Now, there are ways to overcome that. Right? There are things that you can do to make it so that you just pick it all at once and let it be sorted out later. Or, certainly approaches where we are trying to help to pick the fruit in a way that we're not damaging it, it is very important. I spent a day in Salinas. Salinas is, I think, one of the biggest strawberry growers in the world, Salinas, California. And I went out there to pick strawberries so that I would understand that task. And of course, as an engineer, I just had in my mind, oh, right, I can use machine vision and inverse kinematics, and I can pick strawberries all day long. No, why is that even hard? Well, until you go out and actually do the task yourself, there are a lot of things you don't realize, like many of those strawberries that need to be picked are under leaves. They are hidden inside the plant, and you actually have to use one hand to move the leaves away to access those strawberries inside the plant. So we need to do what we can to simplify the problem. And there've been a number, just picking on strawberries, there've been a number of strawberry growers that have taken an approach of growing strawberries in different arrangements so that the strawberries hang down more and that type of thing. So we can take approaches of making the problem more simple, and we can take advantage of AI and better robotics to try and do the harder problems as well. The one strong piece of advice I would give is never try to automate anything that you have not spent a significant amount of time doing yourself first. Get out there. If your plan is to pick apples, you need to get out there and spend a day, a week, a month picking apples. Whatever that job is. Engineers who don't spend the time to actually learn how to do it themselves first are probably not going to be successful at doing it with automation.
Yeah, I'm agree with you. And also, what do you think about possibility of robotization in agriculture? Will be the next after logistics, like one of the main
Yeah.
trend of robotics or not?
Yeah, well, so there is already a lot of automation in agriculture for sure, but it's at what I would call the monoculture or the macro scale, right? We have automated farming over the past century to a point where we have gone from 70%, 75%, I'm not sure what the number was, of people in the United States being somehow working in agriculture down to, I think, 2%, right? And that has been made possible because of automation. Now, it's not robotics necessarily, but things like tractors, right? Better attachments on tractors, better methods. We're able to meet, in many ways, the food needs of the entire United States here, plus, with a very few number of people actually participating in it. So that's what I would call the commodities or the monocultures. Now, the problem with commodities is that, while we can grow thousands and thousands of acres of wheat or corn or soybeans very efficiently, wheat and corn and soybeans are not the healthiest foods for us to be eating as a species. We need leafy greens, we need fruits, we need vegetables. And these are things that are much harder to grow at that scale. And so this is an area where we do need a lot of innovation and automation to help us to figure out how to grow a wide range of healthy foods locally, because the other thing with spinach as opposed to wheat is you can't harvest spinach and put it in a grain silo and save it for 4 years before you eat it. When you harvest spinach, you need to eat it, within days. This creates a whole range of problems that we have not yet figured out how to do effectively with technology yet. So it will be a big area for innovation. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity to do it in a way that doesn't just look at, can we save money, but more importantly, can we create a more healthy food supply for local communities? That would be my focus.
People would like to work less and less in villages, and we need automation there, and
Yeah.
I fully agree with you. And
Yeah,
maybe
and let me just actually add one thing there. If you go to my farm on the web, twistedfields.com, you'll actually see an open source farming robot that we have been developing. We've released this as completely open source. I would encourage anybody in Russia or around the world to participate in this project. You can take the designs, you can build it. We've designed it so that it can be built largely with just off-the-shelf components. And then we can all contribute to this idea of creating a more equitable access to food, to healthy food around the world.
Yeah, great. Please send the link and we'll add it to comments. And I would like to back to standards for robots, for interaction of robots, because we have a lot of kind of robots and we need to interaction each other. Yeah. And what do you think about the standards? Because we don't have the standards. One robot can't work with other robots.
That's right. That's right. It's a really important area. Think about it. If you had to go out and buy a mobile device, right, a cell phone, and you could only run software from the company that built that cell phone hardware on that phone, right? We wouldn't be talking right now if that were the case, right? Standards are so important for an industry to be able to move forward. Now I can go and I can buy a phone from just about anybody, and I can get on the internet. I can use apps. I can, do all of these things. The robotics world is severely behind on that. It's understandable because, we had cell phones for decades before any interoperability standards emerged. But I think we can learn from that in the robotics industry and move faster than has traditionally happened in these industries. So this is one of the things that MassRobotics is very focused on, is helping the industry to move forward faster than it could if we just tried to let this happen naturally. Robots need to interoperate. There's not going to be one robotics company that meets all robot needs that a customer may have, as much as there are companies out there that would like to believe that. It's just not the reality. So customers are going to want to buy robots from different companies and know that they can plug and play, to use that term, but to know that they can work together reasonably well, right? That they're not going to be running into each other, that they're not going to be getting stuck by each other. And so in MassRobotics, and there are some standards out there. The European VDA 5050 standard, takes on some of this, but what we realized is that we just need a very, very simple place to start, where a single robot can share very, very basic information about where it is, what it's doing, its status with other robots, other systems at a customer site. So the MassRobotics interoperability standard is something that I would encourage everybody to take a look at. We'll make sure that there's a link for that in the chat as well. But it is a standard that is so simple that it takes a roboticist, the feedback I've gotten is it takes probably about 4 hours total to implement it on your robot. And then your AMR interop compatible. And then already out there are customers that have standard viewers where all of the robots from different vendors in their sites will show up on this one, show up on one map or one dashboard. It's a small step, but it's an important first step to allow all robots from all vendors to share information in a way that will make them more successful at our customer sites. And if they're more successful, then customers will buy more of them and we'll be able to enhance further over time the capabilities of these platforms and the way the robots talk to each other and work together. So we just felt it was really important to start at something that was easy, that everybody could do, that everybody could buy into. And so I encourage everyone to take that step.
Yeah, it is a small step for one robot, but it is a great step for robot community.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Well, and just showing that as an industry that we can get together and we can work together effectively, right? Again, this pre-competitive collaboration idea. Industries that learn to do this are most successful. It was interesting because a high executive, I think it might have been the CEO at Intel Corporation, once said, Moore's law. So Moore's law is this law that said every 18 months, the number of transistors on a chip would double. He said Moore's law was not a law of physics, right? Moore's law was not a natural law. It was a goal. It was a goal that we set as an industry and that we all worked together to meet that goal. It was not inevitable. It was something that we made happen. And this is what we need to do in the robotics industry as well. Yes, we're lots of different companies, and yes, there's going to be competition. That's all fine. That's all great. There was competition in the chip industry as well, but they work together in this pre-competitive collaboration to make progress in a way that allowed their industry to flourish far, far beyond what would have been possible had they not done this pre-competitive collaboration. And I think that we are seeing that, the boundaries, the traditional obstacles to not working together can be broken down, and we can work together effectively. And my belief is that the companies that learn to collaborate and work effectively together are the companies that will survive and thrive long term. Those that choose to be closed and to not subscribe to standards that don't work effectively with other companies in the industry are going to be those that become less relevant over time.
Yeah, and you mentioned this Moore law, and I also think about it. And what do you think should be the law or the or goal for robotics? Is a standards or something else? What should be goal for robotics?
Yeah.
What can be
Well,
something like Moore law in robotics here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we should probably think about that and talk about that in our various clusters, MassRobotics and the other clusters in the US and internationally. But I think interoperability is certainly a no-brainer, right? Customers should be able to, we need to remove any friction for a customer buying this type of technology. And right now, there are tremendous obstacles for customers to buy this. It's a big lift right now. So if we can get together as an industry and really solve some of these problems where they can bring in robots from 3, 4, 5 different vendors into a facility and flip the switch and have them start providing value without, 6 months of installation and integration and configuration. That's where we need to get to. I've always had this vision of a customer buys a robot, it shows up on their loading dock, they uncrate it, they turn it on, they connect it to the network, and from that point, almost immediately, that robot starts providing value. It's interacting with their human workers, it's interacting with their machinery, it's interacting with other robots from other companies. That's, I think, the robot utopia that we need to figure out how to get to. And standards are an important part of that.
So it's like to short the time between installation and work of robots. So to do it more faster. Yes. Okay. And I also want to ask you, many people think that some law of robotics is to put out robot from some production process. So that robot robots take jobs. So do you agree with it or not?
Because a lot of question about this in our chat.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's been an important conversation for a while, and I think, unfortunately, this is an area that is very emotional. Somebody's job is their livelihood. Somebody's job is their ability to take care of their family. Somebody's job is their self-respect. And so it's understandable when people would feel threatened when they see a robot that they think is starting to do something that might look like a job that they have done. Now, the reality is that robots and all technology have created jobs. You know, I certainly have not seen any customer that we've been involved with fire workers because they've installed these robots. Quite the contrary. The customers that we're working with are desperate for more workers. They're hiring more workers. And part of the reason that that is happening is because they're effectively using robotics to be an efficient business. And that is allowing them to have more human workers in jobs that are more enjoyable, are better suited for those human workers. So as always has been the case in human history, jobs will change over time, right? We don't have a majority of people working in stables to take care of the horses that we're using for transportation anymore. Those jobs have phased out and new jobs have replaced those. I think part of the problem when we think about this very sensitive topic is that we sometimes think about it as what I would call a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game is this idea that there's only so many jobs available in the universe, and therefore, if robots start to do some of those jobs, that those jobs will no longer be available for humans, and humans will have to go without. It is not a zero-sum game, though. That is not the reality of it. We are creating jobs faster than we can find human workers. And I believe that will always be the case because we are always pushing the limits with innovation on new things we're trying, on new things we're doing. And automation will always take time to catch up to that. Technology will always take time to catch up to that. Now, the process is happening faster now than it has in the past. But at the same time, we have better tools to help us adapt to that. Our educational systems are getting better. Our communication tools are getting better. So, you know, I'd say the short answer is, if you look at the data, you could not make a compelling argument that robots have taken any jobs. That doesn't mean that there's not important topics to discuss in this area. We need to have good training for people. We need to make sure that we are taking care of the most vulnerable people in our societies and in our economies. But robotics will help us do that better. I actually published an article on this several years ago called The Prosperity Chain that talks about this idea of how automation and technology helps us to be more human, helps us to do a better job of taking care of each other. I think if we view robotics as the threat, then we're going to lose a really amazing opportunity to solve problems throughout the world in a way that is going to be more humane than ever before.
Yes, robot just help us to do life better. Yeah, but we have some fears that we have from movies, from media, and so on that like to use this
But
topic.
some experts say that about 80% of current jobs will be replaced by robots in future, in next 30 years. What do you think about it?
Well, I'd say that there is some truth to that. Let me give you an example. Many years ago, all telecommunications were handled by a switchboard operator, right? When you picked up the phone to call somebody, you were connected to a human, and that human would say, who should I connect you to? And then you would tell them, and they would take their little switchboard plugs and plug it in to the right slot to connect you to that person. There were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who did this job. And along comes somebody who says, I think we can do that better. I think we can automate the switchboard, and they invented an automated switching circuit. At the time, there was some concern that, oh, we're going to lose all of these wonderful switchboard operator jobs. Of course, what happened was that over time, switchboard operators would retire, and new people would not go into becoming a switchboard operator. They would go into all of the new industries and new opportunities that this new amazing switching technology had created, which nobody, I think foresaw. So I think that's interesting. But to me, the more interesting aspect of this story is that if you were to try to do today's modern communications using switchboard operators, it would take many hundreds of thousands of times the population of the Earth to be able to achieve this kind of communication that we're doing right now with the switchboard operator. Right? It's just, we can't glamorize or have nostalgia for these jobs in the past that aren't the way that things are going to be done in the future. Right? We could have said, let's stop the automated switching circuit because we're going to lose these jobs. The cost to humanity would have been incalculable. Right? So we have to take these things into account. So yes, jobs are going to continue to change over time. So if you say 80% of all jobs will be lost in the next 30 years, that's probably an exaggeration. Probably more likely to say 80% of all jobs will evolve over the next 30 years. And that will probably be a good thing for everybody involved. But we need to make sure as a society that we account for that we have safety nets, that we have training, that we allow, that we understand that there are challenges that technology creates that we need to address, but technology isn't the problem. Even in those cases, right? Technology is the solution. So we can't throw out all of the good because of some threats of job loss.
We just do not know about new possibilities, what we will have with technology. We just have fears and do not know what will be, and do not have any dreams also how it will change. So it's too difficult to imagine it, this new world.
It's you hit it, Elisa. I mean, that is the point. Right there, I just heard a statistic recently where I can't remember the number, but it was like 1/5 of all new jobs are related to social media. 1/5 of all new jobs are related to social media. Now, think about that. Social media did not exist very long ago. It was in all of our lifetimes that social media has come into existence. And now 1/5 of all new jobs are in that space. And that's 1/5 is not the right number, but it's some surprisingly big number. So again, nobody predicted it. Nobody would have guessed. All they saw is, well, technology is going to take jobs. They didn't see the massive new industries that technology was going to create. So we can't predict the future, but what we can do is make sure that we're thoughtful about it.
Yeah. So going back to social media, because I think we have some questions from our viewers.
Yes, and if we'll continue Daniel's thoughts that specialist of switcher was involved. Was switched to specialist of
social media.
not social media, to call center specialist, and we have a lot of call centers now, and many people
But
are there.
now we also have artificial intelligence that help us
Yeah,
to
next evolution.
next evolution.
Yeah.
After call center we'll have
And
something
some
else.
people need to program this artificial intelligence. And
Yes.
next
So
and
on,
next.
so on, so
Yeah.
on. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a question for you about artificial intelligence. How far are we from achieving general artificial intelligence? What do you think? Is it possible or not?
Well, it all depends on the definition of general artificial intelligence. I would say that we are a long, long way from even understanding how to define that term, would be my response. Let me tell you one story. So I was meeting with one of the funders of our research project from the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army was funding some of our robotics research a couple of decades ago, or a decade ago, and we're in the room with them. We were designing this robot, and he said, "Well, I'd also like the robot to be able to pick up that glass over there on the table." And this was actually a humanoid robot, going back to our earlier conversation. But I said, well, that's out of scope for this contract, right? That's not something we're addressing. But I said, that's a completely unsolved research problem at this point in time, for a robot to just be able to see a random object like a cup and pick it up. We've made a lot of progress on that. But he said to me, why? I paid for cameras, so clearly your robot can see the cup, so just tell it to pick it up. Right? So there was this complete lack of understanding of how absolutely amazing the human brain is and how little we understand it. And I think we suffer from a problem that I would call false summits. When you're climbing a mountain and you think you're almost at the top, and then you get up a little bit more, and then you see that the summit is actually higher and higher and higher than it actually is. Back in the 1930s, they believed that a mechanical tool that predicted the schedule of the tides was artificial intelligence, and that they were going to be pretty close to actually mimicking human intelligence, because they could do this thing now, which of course we understand now is just math, that previously it took humans to figure out. Some things have changed, but really that hasn't changed. And what I mean by that is, we are a long, long, long way from even basic understanding of how the human brain works. I mean, topics like self-awareness, we don't even know what it is. We're not even in the game there at all yet. So I would just caution anybody who is making predictions that, robots are going to be smarter, more aware, more intelligent than humans anytime soon. Robots can be much more capable than humans at reading a license plate and looking it up, from a distance than humans. Robots are going to be much greater at, putting things together reliably for a long time. But humans and robots are two completely different things. And artificial intelligence, I believe, is a term that we probably should just get rid of. It's a meaningless term, and it confuses people. There's no such thing as artificial intelligence when it comes right down to it. we don't even understand what intelligence is. So trying to create artificial versions of it is kind of ludicrous. My opinion, I know opinions on this particular topic vary widely.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of opinion. For example, Ray Kurzweil said that we will have singularity in 30 years. Do you believe in singularity?
I would say that that is probably probably an oversimplification of a very complex multidimensional discussion. So yeah, I mean, I'm not. I would say I'm not an AI expert, you know, there certainly could be people out there that know things that I do not. But you know, in all my work with technology and software and AI over the years, I believe that we drastically underestimate what human intelligence is capable of. Because we see little evidences that you know, an algorithm can do something that a human being did, and we overgeneralize that to think that, you know, this type of technology, this pattern matching technology, is somehow going to be capable of doing everything that the human brain does, and we're a long way from that. But you know, the reality is, and I'm sure Ray's position might be, that technology is allowing us to create more technology faster and faster every year, right? It does go exponential. But I'm just wary of anyone who's predicting the future, because we're almost always wrong.
There are a lot of opinions. Some people don't believe in general artificial intelligence. Some people said that it is possible to create, and for example, Ray Kurzweil said that it will be for sure. Okay.
Yep.
But
well,
but
I'll
maybe
I'll make you a deal on this one. When I see it, then I will say that we will get there.
maybe we will not see it. Okay.
Great.
I'm sorry, but maybe first step for general AI will be combine of narrow artificial intelligence programs. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there is a tremendous opportunity to use new algorithms, you know, neural nets, deep learning, these type of things, to solve a bunch of very hard problems. No question about that. And I think that there is a lot of excitement at taking these tools now and seeing what problems are they well suited to solve for humanity. We need to be thoughtful about the problems that we choose to solve first, right? I mean, you know, one great example of this is the humanoid thing again. You know, initially when people wanted to build robots, everyone went out and said, we're going to build humanoid robots because the world was built for humans, and so, you know, humanoid robots are the right way to do everything. And then the industry has gotten a lot more practical since then. Humanoid robots are expensive. There are a lot of pieces that can break. They're fragile in many ways, so they're not necessarily the right way to solve these problems. So we just have to be thoughtful about what problems are we solving and what tools are we using to solve them, and not be so excited about technology for technology's sake.
Okay, and we have one more interesting question from our viewers. Will robots have rights as a human being?
Yeah. So about 12 years ago, I was invited to a robot rights conference, and there was some thought at that point that that rights come from self-awareness, right? Because if you're self-aware, then you have presumably some kind of I don't know how to say it, but you know, you're a being at that point. And the argument was made that if we cannot prove that robots are not self-aware, then we must afford them rights. Personally, I think that's nonsense, right? Because they were talking about you need to then give them breaks and you need to give them vacations. And well, I go back to my dishwasher conversation, right? Your dishwasher is a robot. And no, we cannot prove that it is not self-aware. We cannot prove that it doesn't have sentience, right? You can't prove that I have, there's no way that you can prove that I am self-aware. For all you know, I am a well-crafted automaton that behaves perfectly to the inputs that you give me, and I appear self-aware, but inside here, it's all just black, right? There's no way anyone can prove that anyone else is self-aware. So should we give robots rights? What does that even mean? Do we give our vehicles rights? Do we give our washing machine rights? Do we give our lawnmowers rights? Do we give the factory equipment rights? What rights would those even be? Are we anthropomorphizing them to say that machines want the same rights as human beings? You know, it's an interesting question, but I would say science and technology,
not practical question.
it doesn't support. Well, it's important to talk about it though, I think, because it's helpful for people to understand that just because we call something a robot or we call it artificial intelligence does not make it anything close to a human or even an animal, even an insect, right? I believe strongly that we need to be thoughtful about how we treat all living creatures. But we also have to be careful to not go too far and do things that just don't make sense and then risk human rights, right? We need to think carefully about animal rights. We need to think carefully about plant rights and taking care of our planet. Those are all important things, but they need to be balanced with taking care of human beings and making sure that the human beings around the world that are suffering continually need to be a priority for us and need to at least have a level of priority consistent with, you know, some of these other topics that are also important. But no, personally, I don't believe that rights for machines is a sentence that has real meaning.
Yeah, any life is more important than
But
machines.
some people give names for their equipment. For example, my vacuum cleaner robot name is Toby.
Toby.
Toby and
Toby is free, for
Toby.
example, after cleaning. Okay,
yeah.
Let's go back to more practical question. And what global trends in robotics do you see now? For example, in the near future?
Well, I think one of the things that's really exciting is just the number of robotics companies that are springing up. I just got back from a trade show called Modex. It's the logistics, it's sort of the biggest logistics trade show in the US, at least. Yes, 5 minutes. Sorry. And one of the things that was really amazing was just seeing the huge proliferation of robotics companies out there. So I'd say the trend that I'm seeing is that robotics is here to stay now. People realize that robotics is here to stay. So we're in this springtime of excitement around what are all the things that we can do with it? What are all the problems we can solve with it? And I think that's what's going to be exciting over the next few years in industry is all of those problems that, you know, people haven't figured out how to solve in the past. Maybe robotics is a solution. And there are a lot of smart people out there that are going to use robots to solve problems that weren't possible to solve in the past. So I'd say that that's one of the biggest.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions too, but I think you need to go, yeah?
Or you have some time.
I am missing another meeting right now. So let's take one more. Let's take one more question, And then we can do a follow-up. Let's do one more question today, and then we can do another session another time.
I think we have last question about your advice to beginners in robotics. What can you say, and we'll finish.
Yeah, robotics is an exciting field. Don't be afraid. Just try it. Until you get your hands, kind of what Elisa was saying earlier, get your hands on a little bit of hardware. There's tons of it out there. A Raspberry Pi computer, you can get these things for very, very small amounts of money. If you can't get your hands on one, I know of places that are working to try and make this hardware more available. But get your hands on something and just start doing something. The people who are successful in these fields are the people who are passionate about it, the people who are excited about it, the people who do things in their spare time, right? It can't just be I go to university and I study this, and then when I go home, I'm not interested in it anymore. The people who are going to be successful are the people who are just passionate about the work they do. So do something, start a hobby project, try and solve it with robotics. And you're going to have a lot of fun, and you're going to learn so much. And even if you don't end up doing robotics, that experience with trying to do robotics will help you in any industry you go into. And as I said before, myself and I'm sure both of you, and there's a whole industry here of executives that are excited to help. Reach out to us, ask us questions, ask us suggestions, ask us for suggestions. It's an exciting time, and you can be part of it. You don't have to come from a world-leading university to be a world-leading roboticist. You just have to be passionate about it, and you have to do it.
Be brave and just do it.
Try.
Yeah. Okay, Daniel, thank you very much. It was a lovely conversation.
Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
And we hope that we'll see you maybe in
near future again.
Near future again. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, our viewers. Please like our video and write your comments. What next topic would you like to see? Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.